We're in peak ISA season and your ISA questions are coming in thick and fast. One that's worth exploring is whether you actually need an ISA and whether they're even worthwhile. Well, sit tight because I'm going to go through this all to help you decide. So, what's the point of an ISA? Well, the main draw is that any money you make from cash within one is tax free. This continues year after year. Once the money is in an ISA, it's shielded from tax. Now, in the past, this might not have been that important because interest rates have been so low, but ISAs become much more valuable when savings rates and earnings increase. This is because more people end up exceeding their personal savings allowance, which I'll explain more about later, and are more likely to pay their usual rate of tax on their savings interest. But if you stick your money in an ISA or across different ISAs, all your earnings are tax free. This includes savings interest from cash ISAs and any dividends issued from investments or gains made from selling shares in a stocks and shares ISA. So far, so good, but it's worth noting that an ISA isn't the only way to avoid tax on interest earned or gains on investments. There are different allowances on savings, dividends, and gains, and you can also save tax-free in premium bonds. These have been enough for most savers and investors in recent years, and ISA just hasn't been that important. However, lots of things have changed, and more could be around the corner, which have made ISAs much more valuable. First, though, a quick reminder of the different ISAs and how they work. So, to give you a rundown of the key ISA rules, there are 4 types of ISA: cash, stocks and shares, lifetime, and innovative finance. You can now pay into as many of each type as you want. There's a combined limit of £20,000 that you can put into them each year, including a £4,000 limit of the lifetime ISA. You can keep previous year's allowances, but you can't roll over any that was unused. And you can transfer your ISA money to a new provider, which keeps it shielded from tax and doesn't impact your current year's allowance. You can read more on how ISAs work in our full guide on the website. Now, what we've seen recently is a lot of talk about potential changes to ISAs. We've seen plenty of rumours about what could happen, from Labour scrapping them completely to cutting the annual allowance of cash ISAs to encourage more investing. We now know there's nothing happening to ISAs in the upcoming spring statement, but who knows what could happen later down the line. If there were changes like these that were introduced, then there's a risk that less of your money would be shielded from tax. And while we'd suggest topping up your ISA as much as you can afford before the tax year ends to make the most of your allowance, these potential changes give you an extra incentive. Paying as much in as you can will not only protect your money in this tax year and the next, but each year after. And even if you're mainly saving in cash right now, putting in an ISA now can help you if you want to invest large sums in a few years, as you can transfer it across to use it to buy shares in a stocks and shares ISA without using any of that year's allowance. So what else makes ISAs worthwhile? Well, as I mentioned earlier, another big one is the higher interest rates that we've been seeing at the moment. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer, you can earn £1,000 of interest tax-free every year thanks to your personal savings allowance. So this would include whatever you're earning from non-ISA savings. Higher rate taxpayers get £500 a year, while there's nothing for additional rate taxpayers. With interest rates so low for so long, most savers may not have needed to bother with an ISA and instead could focus on the highest paying savings account. However, things have changed. Last year, we saw easy access accounts paying more than 5% and regular savers hitting 5 to 7%. And though rates have been falling down again, it's a lot easier than it was to breach your allowance. So with £21,000 in a non-ISA savings account paying a top easy access rate of 4.75%, a basic rate taxpayer will be just within their PSA, while a higher rate taxpayer would be just within theirs if they had savings of £10,500. Another thing to note is that if you are fixing your savings outside of an ISA for a year or more, you'll often get all the interest at once when the term ends rather than monthly. And the tax applies on interest when you can access it. So you could find you're hit with a bill at the end of the term because the interest has accumulated over several years and pushed you over your allowance. Another reason ISAs have become more valuable is because of the freeze on income tax bands. The 20% and 40% tax bands will stay as they are until 2028. That means those who are close to those current levels could get pushed into the next tax band with each pay increase or promotion. And once you earn £50,270 a year, you lose half your personal savings allowance. Combined with increased interest rates, we could see how that £500 could be quite easy to fill. Meanwhile, the income threshold before you pay 45% tax dropped from £150,000 to £125,000 £140 a year in April 2023. So that means that those who earn above this new level will no longer receive the savings allowance at all, so they'll pay 45% tax on all the interest they earn. Now, if that wasn't enough, tax-free investing allowances have also been cut in the last few years. So you can earn a lot less from investments held out of an ISA before tax applies. To quickly explain, if you've got certain shares that you've invested outside of an ISA, you might get dividends paid throughout the year. These are effectively bonus payouts, usually if the company has done well. You're taxed on this, but you'll also receive a tax-free dividend allowance. But it's nowhere near as generous as it was. In April 2023, it was cut from £2,000 to £1,000 a year, and then cut again in April 2024 to £500 a year. If you have a lot of shares that issue dividends, or perhaps you receive them from a limited company, this reduction will mean you'll be more likely to pay tax at your marginal rate on any dividends paid outside an ISA. Now, during the same period, the tax-free allowance for capital gains has also been cut. Again, this is for shares that aren't in an ISA, though you can make gains on other sales like second properties or art. Now, the allowance is currently £3,000, but back in April 2023, it was £6,000. Now, £3,000 might be enough for investors who make a profit when selling shares, but over time, it's more likely you'll see gains that go past this. One note here is that you can combine allowances as a couple, effectively doubling how much is tax-free. So as you can see, there are plenty of reasons to consider ISAs in 2025, and for many of us, they should be your first port of call when it comes to putting your money somewhere. Now, I'm sure lots of you will be wondering how best to use your ISA allowance. I can't tell you exactly what to do, as you'll all have different income, responsibilities, savings, investments, and goals, but I will talk you through some suggestions. I'm going to ignore lifetime ISAs here, though they are worth considering in the mix if you are hoping to buy a first home. It's worth just remembering that for most people to save or invest £20,000 a year is quite unlikely, so you'll probably have enough of your annual allowance to pay into a mix of different ISAs. So, if you are an investor, then there's a chance you're going to pay more tax over time as your profits grow outside an ISA. For new money, it makes sense to put it in a stocks and shares ISA rather than a general investment account if you're not already doing this, and save your cash elsewhere rather than in a cash ISA so that you can free up as much of your allowance as you can for those investments. And when it comes to existing money saved in a UK general investment account, you might want to transfer those stocks and shares into an ISA using a process known as a bed and ISA transfer. The idea is that you sell your shares and buy them again in an ISA at the same time. However, there could be fees and the value could change while this is happening. There's an official process for this, and if you're thinking about doing it this tax year, move with speed. Different providers have different deadlines, and some might have already passed, so I'd suggest doing it sooner rather than later. You'll pay tax on gains outside of the capital gains tax allowance when you do this. So if you have substantial amounts invested, only move over as much as fits within that. Though of course you'll also be restricted to £20,000 each financial year. Now, if you're just a cash saver and you're worried about breaching your personal savings allowance, ISAs are useful again. However, for those earning less than £50,270 a year with a few hundred or a few thousand in savings, even putting your money in the highest paying accounts will unlikely breach your allowance. But what I will say is that at the moment, cash ISAs are offering some of the top rates on the market, so we'd suggest putting your money there first to take advantage of the rates. You can head over to becleverwithyourcash.com/ISAs to see all the best paying options. On top of this, an ISA is also definitely worth considering in the following circumstances. So if you are a higher or additional rate taxpayer, if you have large sums earning decent interest rates, and if you have a long-term fixed account paying interest at the end. If you exceed your ISA allowance and your personal savings allowance, you can also use premium bonds, which offer tax-free prizes. And if you're a low earner, you'll also get access to the starting rate of savings. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you check out these videos for more ways to help you make the most of your money.